this institute that you're attending and its educational division, the whole unit is not one man by any manner of means, and has never been. All the way back, beginning in 1958, 59, there have been supporters, participants, ranging from physicists, psychologists, doctors, MD types, engineers, a lot of those fellows, and surgeons, educators, professors from various universities, and a goodly number of other similar types have made their contribution through the years to what the Institute is now. And the best way you can get a handle on that is look at the texture of our current Board of Advisors. Will give you a feel for that. Look at our professional division and you get another feel of what we really are. And beyond that is this mass of people who are simply having a good time because they've participated either in a gateway or something akin to it. So that would give you another feel. The second thing is that I'm sure if the team didn't tell you that the interesting change that took place all the way in 1985, if you can believe it, from 1950, very quickly in 1985 we moved it over into a non-profit status and a separate, independent organization from the interstate industries. So it's important to know that that movement and why it was made. So in our organization, no one is taking down six-figure salaries or anything like that. It isn't that kind of thing. Well, there's not the money to do it, of course, too. But that's not the motive and the motivation of the Institute. But these were the two things that I keep forgetting to tell. And I'll move it over here because it's more viewable. And I did cover that where you are, did I not? See what else I can find in here. Oh, I found a nice, clean, bare sheet. Isn't that fine? Now, I did also give you the line of demarcation, did I not? All right. We're going to take another look at that particular LD and give it another kind of form, just for the plain meanness of it. Can everybody see this with reasonable viewing? Fine. The LD, line of demarcation, bang, bang, crash. Now, let's put below the line, which again is the area of the knowns, remember? Let's put a big mass of disorganized stuff, and that disorganized stuff is human thought. You would be amazed the depth of disorganization that you find in it when you view it from another perspective. Be that as it may, with all the stuff that you know of which humans think and the mix of it, that radiates out, wham, 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 whip, like that. And there is an inverse square law at work, I hope, but we're not sure. On the other side of the coin is that eternal M field that comes down through here like this and radiates through there. Now, a funny thing has happened on the way to the store, as it were, where we, us, how and why did we get here? This is the thing that is a subject of great curiosity, to say the least. Well, let's take a typical one, but not the most important one. Here, we are moving along here, and boing, we hit that part of that radiation, and we smell it, taste it. What's that? So we move in a little lever over here to another, and we get another taste of it. We say, You know, that's real interesting. I wonder what that is and what that's like. So you're trying to figure a way where you can move in here because it's getting pretty strong stuff and sticky and this kind of thing. So you're very cautious. And at that particular moment, as you're contemplating, you're perceiving all this in here with great curiosity. All of a sudden, this big man, wouldn't that's a misnomer, a he-she, that's more like it, appeared and said, what do you want? And you say, oh, well, what's that down there? He says, that's humans. And you say, well, can I go closer? And he says, well, not unless you be human. You say, well, I'll be human. He says, you what? He says, well, I'd like to be human. And he says, well, I suppose you could if you really wanted to. And you say, well, how do I do it? He says, well, just call me Ed, incidentally. I'm the entry director, and just so you can call me Ed for short. You say, oh, yes, Ed. Okay. He says, the first thing you have to do in order to be human, you say, oh, don't misunderstand. I just want to get a taste, a sample, and zoom in and zoom out. That's all. I don't want to stay there. Oh, no, I wouldn't think of staying there. That's just a taste. You know, just a little sip. And Ed looks at you and says, yes, I understand. So what you do in that process, he says, the first thing that you need to do in order to be human is recognize that time-space exists. And you say, well, somehow I perceive it. There it is. He says, well, what you perceive is only part of it. There's a lot more to it than that. And you say, well, I'll take my chances. He says, well, the other part is that you have to recognize that when you become human, that you have an important thing you must do in order to be human. You say, oh, what's that? He says, well, you have to have shut off all of your present memory and your present self. Otherwise, you can't generate this human consciousness. You say, oh, sure, I can pick it up when I get out. And he says, yeah. And he says, the other thing is that you are really on your own, because that's what that is down there, is that people are on their own. Those who come in and become human make supposedly their own decisions. You say, oh, I'll make my own decisions. He says, yeah. So he says, now, if you really want, we can set it up. You say, oh, sure, I could go. He says, all right, first thing you got to do is, what do you want? Do you want to be male or female? And you look and say, what's that? He says, never mind. He says, can I select for you? Oh, yeah, you tell me which way. All right, fine. He says, the next thing is that you have to make a decision of where you want your entry point is. And he says, that's a decision that you have to make, because there are kind of problems. He says, for example, on Park Avenue in New York, there's a wait list line, a long wait list line to get there. Can't get Marin County, California, long line, that kind of stuff. And he says, Beverly Hills, almost impossible. So he says, we got plenty of fast takers, say in Africa, instant service, you can get in right away. South America, the same thing, easy, no problem. And he says, and I can just really rig it. And you say, well, that first one, it sounds pretty interesting, but you say it's waitlisted. He says, yeah, Park Avenue, forget it, but in New York. He says, and you say, but if it's New York, and it's close to that waitlisting, isn't there any place in New York I can get in? And he thinks this is, yes, I can get you in, as a matter of fact, pretty quickly. Just right now, just wait and see. You see, that's fine, you're right. He says, all right, you got to be careful now. Remember, you're on your own. He says, oh, I can make it. So he says, okay, you agreed, sign the contract. He says, okay, fine. Click, I sign. So he takes you, and he goes, Coon! And you go, bang. And at that bang, you look very closely, if one were there, and they would see a little newborn baby squalling and screaming, not hearing the screams to let me out of here, but just a screaming baby, newly born, lying in the broken glass, the garbage, and the dust and the dirt on the landing of a fifth-floor walk-up in the Bronx, while the 13-year-old mother, having just given birth, is hurrying down the stairs to get away. And so one begins life here. The thing that happens after that is where the action really starts. You go through that life process, and the symbology can have been 100,000 years ago. The whole symbology is still the same. And you make your exit, and you start out again. Now, originally, your intent was to take your escape velocity and go on out and continue wherever you were intending to go or whatever you intended to do. But right about here somewhere, you begin to bend a little bit. And the reason is that as you made this process through here in what we call physical life, you picked up a greater load factor than you realized. Unconsciously, you picked up that load factor, and you had friction, which slowed you up. The combination of those two is expressed in the bending of that, where you, no one else, no law, nothing else, makes the decision when you said, how many times, I got to go back. It's just something I wanted to do, and I didn't get a chance to do it. I wanted to have 5 children instead of 2, and I got to go back and have 3 more children, or some such thing. Or I never got to drink alcohol. I'd like to go back and drink some booze. Whatever the reason. And you say, oh, just say to yourself, just once, that's all, and then I'll go on my way. And so you begin that turn to make just once more, one little more run, just one more for the road or whatever. And at that moment, that decision, which was yours and no one else's, no law, no rule, just you lost your escape velocity. And you went into orbit in this area. And you went down and around again. Had another life. And as you came out of that, you still were, as in essence, above this line. So you were recognized still from whence you came. You came up around in here, and you made another decision. Having lost more velocity, having picked up an additional load factor, you're here. And you say, oh, it won't hurt to go back once more. And I've always wanted to ride a camel. So you decide to go back and ride and own a camel. So round you go again and go through the process here. And again, you are steadily losing velocity, and your orbit is decaying, as you can see. Once you get below this line of demarcation, as it were, you're thinking more about here than you are about there. Your memory of you as you originally were is declining because of the overwhelming input from this human radiation. So down you go again for another life, another one, another one, another one, until you get to this point where you're locked in, and you have little, even in between life sojourns, you have little, if any, perception of this radiation from whence you came. And there's a word for that, which I probably have already used, that fits it very, very accurately. And that word is, we all have become human junkies. We're addicted to being human and the human experience. Whether that was a part of the original design, you can have your own conjecture about that. But that is fact. If you want to prove it, that's the point. You have the ability, growing right now, to begin to prove these things to yourself. No one else can tell you. You can prove it to yourself. So, that's the first point of entry. There are other ways that entry takes place up here. One of the more amusing ones, and you will begin to perceive these in other people. That's the fun part. One is what is called, or what used to be called, a remittance man. If you remember in the colonial empire where they had a black sheep in London of a noble family, and he was just embarrassing the family tremendously by his bouts of whatever. And so the family shipped him off during colonial empire days, say to New Zealand, Australia, Singapore, and remitted money to him monthly to keep him there, to pay him to stay away from London and the embarrassment of his presence. What happens here, it's very interesting. We will find other people, other beings, non-human, making an entry here, and they have all the appearance of having been paid to be here, and they don't really want to be here, but they've been paid here to be here because of the fact that someone sent them here and paid off to get them here. Another form of it that's equally interesting is the one that has such profound merit is the being who appears to be on the run from some other energy system, and he's looking for a place to hide. He's got to hide somewhere. And he spots this and says, "Oh, that's great." Wham, and goes in. And here are the guys after him, who can be the old version of the KGB or whatever after him. And what he doesn't know when he makes that dive is that every time he exits and ends a life sojourn, he again is over here. And when he does that, these pursuers are ready to grab him and say, "Gotcha." The other thing that makes it even worse is that when he sleeps at night, in that, you're right on the edge of it, in that past 21 era, and he's sleeping and he drifts out there, they're ready to grab him right now because he's far enough out of phase with his physical body. He's a good target, and they want to grab him. And so he has these horrible nightmares all his lifetime, trying to not to sleep. He becomes deathly afraid of sleeping, and he becomes much more afraid of dying, because that means the boys will really gotcha when he dies and take him back for whatever reason. Then there's the other types, of course, that in turn are the missionary types, who perceive all of this roiling mass of disorganization and want to do something about it. You could say they're a super form of do-gooders, but they come to fix it, help it. And so they come in here, and they, in turn, the price of losing their memory, their personality, but they still try to express it. And most, if not all of them, become enmeshed in this whole cycle themselves, forgetting all about what the real motive was to help, and they get boozed up themselves. Then the other part, of which one that I'm very familiar with, is where a friend of yours gets enmeshed, and you go in then to retrieve your friend, to rescue your friend, and you too get enmeshed. More common than you think. Most importantly, what the real, I'll put it in our modern jargon, the most attractive advertising for this being human, bar none, and which attracts most, if the highest percentage and the majority of those who come to be human, is to meet a graduate of this particular compressed learning school. A graduate of the being human experience is, I have to be unequivocal about it, is a God in other energy systems. and you have to think of it that way, is a God as we term God, put it that way. And remember, our concepts of God from one perspective is very much local traffic type of perception. But there it is that's once you meet a graduate of this particular system, truly a graduate, then in turn you, and probably have, said to yourself, I will do anything 1,000 times, 100,000 times, whatever, if I can be like that graduate. And that's exactly the important thing. Because a graduate is much on the order of what we perceive to be a super something. And the availability of that being and where those graduates go and be is something that we will not get into tonight, but it becomes obvious that they are no longer interested in local traffic. So I can just hear the radiation of all of you as you're saying, well, what about us? Where are we? Are we locked in? Wrong. You are those, and I can give you a number of different descriptions, and you can figure out the acronym when I say you're the SAers, S.A.ers, who have begun the recycling, where you in turn have begun to work yourself out more and more. In other words, you're on your way out. You have begun to achieve a deeper and deeper orbit. That's who you are. Step by step, laboriously, lifetime after lifetime, you have begun to accumulate or re-establish escape velocity. My best guess, and it's only a guess because it's so hard to measure, that most Gateway graduates are up in here sometime. In other words, they are on the verge not of achieving escape velocity, but way up here on what I call the last timer role. I see you as those who, when they make their exit from this sojourn, this time will get into this last sojourn spot of contemplation or thinking about what will be my last run in. You are a last timer to be. So what that role is that you will play for the last time is something that you will decide, not now, but where you are in this contemplative, non-physical state. And I might add that some have stayed there for thousands of years. And I say that in a very funny way because that is out of time, but by our concept, they would have stayed there for thousands of years. And you have some very, very fascinating options, knowing that our recorded history is this limited when the span of human history is about 10 to 20 times that long at least. So that gives you an idea of what your options are, and your options don't become limited to the future. They're all up and down that span of human existence. Fascinating? Great opportunities. Think what fun you can have, you know? So that is where you are, how you are, and why you are. And it again has something of extreme interest. And what I need to do then is show you why some of those things are in that way and how that relates to you. And this is interesting in that it will help you begin to perceive you as you really are. And I have to tell you a story in order to do that. When I went through a span of stages in my goals, my desires. My first one was And you can see how these things begin to change. And some interesting news for you. You will change new also, so don't worry about it. It'll be very automatic. But mine, I have to do the hard way. First of all, as I developed this perception as I am, or thought I was, what happened was that I got into the idea that my goal would be to be in the service of humankind, having perceived those up there in that outer contemplative period who were still thinking about how they could help humans, and having met those coming in who were mission bound or being missionaries or whatever. My goal seemed to be that could I possibly do something or continue in the service of humankind. What, forever? I never even thought of what forever meant. But that being the goal, to be that, to help all these miserable characters that were still stuck back here. This had been my goal and was for many years, until one of my non-physical friends, we got into the discussion of goals, and he said, well, maybe our goals are different. And I said, well, to him, I says, I don't see how they could be worse. We're so much alike. And obvious when I thought about it. I took months and months to get to this because there are other parts of life to do other than just simply sit around and contemplate. Not in my case anyway. So I finally got around to, yes, it's a great enlightenment. Aha, yes, I know what another goal is, and that's a beautiful goal. And that goal was to go home, because we all have this intense nostalgia to go home. And I thought, yes, that's for me. I want to go home. What I want to do is take my human learning experience and go back home and help home be more than it is. This was my goal. And that's great. Oh, I lived this, and this is wonderful. And built into it were all the usual things. Go back, the local boy makes good, and he goes down the street with his zoot suit or his whatever, his super loafers, whatever, you know, the whole thing. And his bag full of tricks, well, or knowledge. And that seemed like I'm adding the reality to it, because quite probably much of that was the noble goal of helping home be more than it was as I remembered it, but being realistic that probably my egoism was in there muchly too. So, and I had been home twice, way back in the early years, and home to me was a estate place where there were these beautiful moving clouds in different rainbow hues and things like that. And that was where home was, to be in those clouds. And as you were in those clouds, there was this, and I'm only translating something that can't be translated, there was this tremendous 1,000-piece symphony orchestra of music playing constantly, or you could hear it. And then a 1,000-voice choir behind that, and all this mixed into this beautiful state of being. And how wonderful I remembered that exquisite beauty of it. And each time when I had visited there upon request, I had to be pulled back here because it was so endearing to me to go home. From whence I came. And I gave it the letters KT95 because what it was non-translatable as I could figure it. So after a long years went through, and I happily said, this is the thing I would like to do, is go home. Going home, that's the whole thing. And I equated it with all the things that we do as humans of that nostalgia to be home, and we put that at a physical site somewhere where we were born or where we grew up, and these kinds of things. And I tied it all to that. And that going home process also was a part of the scientific things that we get into as humans. The idea of gathering information and knowledge, or listening with multi-hundred-million-dollar telescopes to hear something from out there, hoping what? or traveling to the moon and to stars. It's that urge, that going home urge. And that's what it looked like to me. And that worked wonderfully for me. That was a great, great developing thing, that thing to go home. And I even remember the Curls playing, which was a term for young teenage kids, and playing the games and playing in those wild games that they played, and indiscriminate types of games. I wanted to take home what I had learned here and give them to the Curls and let them play some new games. Anyway, to make it very short, and it gets long, I'm sorry I get so windy. What happened in that normal course of events, and this is a span of years, one of my non-physical friends, this inspect type, which is short for intelligent species, which to me always equated to a non-human. Well, somebody laughed anyway, good. This whole process of going home was so important to me that I didn't know how to be sure to get there. So this inspect taught me what I have labeled in my loose terms the quick switch method, which is a simple means of you're here and you want to be there, so it's like stretching yourself like a rubber band to where you want to be and letting go here and snap, you're there. It's that simple. And he taught me that in this one run, and that's how I first learned that. And with that method, sure enough, there I was. I wanted just a quick visit. I hadn't been there for years and years in my physical life. I wanted just to reinforce it, to feel what it was. I didn't want to stay there. I just wanted to feel it. Sure enough, the quick switch works and clicked. There I was in the beautiful rolling clouds. There was the constant change, the kaleidoscopic change in color. And here was the music flowing in and around like that. And I lay back and just reveled in how beautiful this was, how wonderful, how enchanting. It was exactly as I remembered it. And I thought, this is indeed worth going home for. And as I lay there, the thing that has always been, quote, successful, and I must have said it to you earlier, that gets into my act is my analytical left brain gets into the act and does something, and that's the only reason that I can make things work. And it, as I was lying there, reveling in this and wallowing in it, my left brain triggered something like a little itch. And I said, what's that? And after a little bit, a little itch again. And I thought, something wrong? And I looked and felt these beautiful, bubbleless, rolling clouds and watched them. And after watching them consistently again and again, I was startled because there was the itch, click. The same pattern was repeating itself. What I had seen, quote, 2 minutes earlier or 2 eternities earlier was back again. It was like an endless loop of this patterns and colors moving like that around. And I watched it again to be sure that it was in a loop. Exactly the same roll going here, went around, and here it comes again. And I thought, damn. And so my itch got bigger, and I listened to the music, and carefully, and here's this, and it went around, and here's all a bunch of others, and again, or a certain time later, I said, oh, excuse me, shade.
Yeah.
And then I said, I'll give it one more shot. I backed out of the clouds and the music and went down to where the Curls, young kids as it were, little vortices of energy, were playing. And I pulled out of my bag of tricks and says, hey kids, how about some new games? And they looked at me with this, new games? Who would want to play new games? They said, oh, these are new, they're fast. Oh, we don't want to play any new games, get away from us. And they went on playing their super crack the whip and everything else like that. And I couldn't get them to play. And I stuck my games back in my bag, as it were. And then this great realization came to me, and it was a shock, because it was a cumulative thing. I couldn't go home. There was no question about it. That I couldn't go home because I didn't fit anymore. The glove that I was had become, the hand would not fit that glove of home. It was a great, deep sadness that I realized I could not go home. Conversely, with that same realization, I also knew why I phased out of KT95 and came here. A very simple reason. Can you gather a reason quickly was? I was bored. I was bored. I wanted change. I wanted progress, something other than playing games or lying in the clouds. And it was a very, very deep sadness that held me for a long time, perhaps 2 or more, 3 years maybe, where I didn't have any particular goal, because it was a lost dream, as it were. Recognition that I couldn't do that. So naturally, one reaches out and grabs for something else, and this inspect, short for intelligence, species friend, I thought that's what I would like to become, one of the inspects. I have to become that. It's important that I become that, because they are what to me were godly. They had all the attributes that seem to be in. And also, then to reinforce that, I said, well, could I get into your inspect land or your inspect state just a little bit? And she said, oh, sure. And he took me over to this place, and here was this flow of intense warmth, friendliness, love, beings moving in this direction. And they were all heading for this inspect land. And I think I wrote about that in Far Journeys. And that became my goal immediately from that on, because of the tremendous sense of unity that was expressing itself within that flow moving into inspect land. So from that moment on, I decided joyously I'm going to be an inspect. And the continuing relationship with this being did not denigrate it. In other words, it was if that was sort of accepted. And so that went on for 4 or 5 years or whatever, joyously. Here I am planning, when I get this side of my being human completed and go get on my way here, I can go be there. It was great stuff. Until on one, I got to remember, my process at that time was pretty simplistic. I found that the easiest way for me to phase out and be in this OB state was at 3 o'clock in the morning, go through a couple sleep cycles, and then I'm awake, I'm rested, and I'm totally relaxed. It's absurdly easy, and will be for you if you want to play in that field. Is simply to roll out of this. It's so simple, you'd be surprised. Go to 21 and you're there. It's so simple. And it's at 3 o'clock in the morning. Everything's quiet, the phone's not going to ring, all sorts of excuses. No cats on the bed, all sorts of stuff. So, what had happened was that historically, many years prior, probably about 5 years after I started getting into the out-of-body state, I had in turn gotten into a frustrated point that I didn't know what to do with this. I had no idea what to do with it. So in desperation, on one of those 3 o'clock in the morning states, I rolled out and said, I don't know what to do next. How many times can I go to the West Coast on a test? How many times can I go pinch people? All these kind of things. And so I said, total self, you take over. And I'm not knowing, I didn't like the word soul, so I used that to cover, whatever it might be. And with this beautiful certainty, wham, all of us, the whole other patterns of this operation in this state of being opened up to me from that moment on. And merrily I went on the way, letting every time this total self do the driving and do the navigating. All I did is just go along, as it were. And so that had been going on for years and years and years. So back up to recent time, one particular meeting with this inspect, and we are having a normal conversation, normal communication, as it were, and all of a sudden she said, "I'm sorry, Mr. Monroe, but this is our last meeting." And I got this great shock. "What?" And he says, "This is the last time we can meet." And I said, "Well, what did I do? Did I do something wrong?" "No," he said, "you are just moving in a direction that you need to move, and this will not serve that purpose." And I was totally bewildered and shocked. And I said, "Well, won't we ever see each other again?" So he says, "Yes, but not in this form." Wink, gone. Winked out, and he was disappeared. And talk about shock. I thought, what had done wrong? What was happening? So she had said one small thing in a previous, that the basics were important, and that was the phrase, basics were important. And in thinking days and months after this cutoff, what it was, I remembered the phrase, and I thought, basics, what basic thing had I missed? What basics? And in going around the circle, then suddenly this big aha opened up, and it took a long time to get to it, and that was about 4 years ago. This big aha. And I said, "You know, I have been riding around in this total self vehicle all these years, and I've never looked under the hood." You understand what I mean? I don't know who's doing the driving. I don't know who's doing the navigating. And I've been happily doing it. So I decided to do that, is to look under the hood of this I. And I give this to you tonight because I think it's so important. May I drink my coffee? Why is this important? Because you're in 21, and this is the opportunity for you to play. We all like the tendency to move outward and perceive externals. One of the key things tonight, that I think you can do is know yourself first. Because that's what I had to do in going back and looking under the hood, as it were, of what I am. Now, I can tell you what I found. I found, first of all, instead of in 21 enrolling this way, and put it in, it's a crude way, but it's the best I can do. I rolled this way, inside, and moved inward. And it took weeks and months to get this piece by piece knowledge, information, or whatever. But what I began to find, first of all, was a catalog being continually updated on every possible part of me, of my experience, my emotions, my activities, whatever. It was a memory bank, if you want to put it that way, a life history recording of me. And you could go up and down that whole life history and back to when you were a 2-year-old, and the stupid things that you had curiousness of. And I give you a little, I have to be intimate with you because I can't do it any other way. For example, I had always wondered why I was hiding in the bushes as about a 2-year-old or 3-year-old at my grandmother's house. So I went down the line to find out what really happened, and it was very amusing. I didn't want to go in the house because I had a faces in my pants. Stupid, but it's these kinds of things you can find out about yourself up and down that thing, and you can find all the stupid things and all the brilliant things you did in your life up to date. And there it is, and it's constantly being added to. It's as if, another way of putting it is it is as if we are all operating a computer workstation here, if you can think of it that way. And that's a mainframe, and you're feeding the mainframe with all this data, and you're offloading it over here into what might be called short-term memory or whatever, but that's all the permanent feed up there. And it's all, anything that you know or think you are or hide from, is all there. It's all open, but it's, you look at it, it's so clean and so beautifully organized that it's fun to get to know the real parts of you by hitting that mainframe that is a part of that whole thing of you. This is all you. This is the points. Not anywhere else, not in some wild universe. This is you. Moving inward to that, there was another layer, which is a busy place, as it were, and I watched it with great amusement, that there's it is an emotional layer, and this is a layer of all the emotions you're constantly accumulating, and there's a mechanism that's shoveling them off somewhere, like this, joint, joint, joint. It's like a conveyor belt that's throwing it out this way while your life is dumping it in here. It's very interesting. And I found out later, of course, that's the way it looks, but it's actually sorting it out and classifying the different types of emotion. So then moving, and it took a long time to get past these fascinating things. And then there is this intellectual level, layer, and getting into that, and that was a lot of familiar things, but there again, it was knowledge that I had no knowledge I had that information, which is fascinating. And totally, and I spent weeks and months in there. It's, again, like a system of cataloging. And beyond that is where I really found there was like a barrier there, and like a wall. And the wall had been pierced, and I later found out how and why, but it was as if there was a form, a crack in this wall, a hole, where it was humanoid in shape, and the shape of me, my physical self. It was very funny. And there's a long story about how that happened, but that's another part of it. And that, I suddenly, one afternoon, had the courage to go in. And what did I find? It was astounding. Here was and I looked at it, and different people look at it in different ways, but I looked at it as a huge, huge carpet of flowers, is the best way I can put it. But each flower was a life experience, a life personality. And I looked at these thousands of flowers and said, come on, wait a minute, I've been all of these? And over here is a laugh, chuckle, and says, sure, kid, sure, what'd you expect, you know? And here's this mass of different textured, radiating, vibrant things, and this this pattern of, it's how to describe it, it's indescribable, except it's like a huge family feel, like brothers and sisters, aunts and uncles. It has that kind of feel, only much closer. And there's this total intercommunication with all of these, in the sense that they know you, and as you begin to work and go touch one of the flowers, which you soon find out is a face, hi boy, and the joy that you have finally recognized this. And that was reflected in, I look and I say, so this is what it's all about. This is what I am. All of these life personalities, all of these lifetime experiences. And I then said, and that's what it is. And I finally have made that understanding, that brilliant thing. And this voiceover says, well, it took you long enough. And then I found out much more about what I now call the I there of me, and take the hyphen out, and it becomes the it of me. and the it of which I am and it is I, is indeed composed of literally, and nobody really bothers to count it in my it cluster, how many lives we have lived. But it's somewhere above 2,000, and that I figure is enough. And nobody bothers. Just go find out for yourself. And I don't want to go over there and count all these different things. Nobody does, so we don't know. But as the need arises, and there's sort of an executive committee, as it were, how these were selected, I have no idea. I am whatever, that selects a number of life personalities to form a new one, and to send down for or insert into an earth life sojourn. And mine was selected for a very specific, from specific life experiences, to live in the century of the fire wagons. In other words, the 20th century, when we were using explosions to do things with instead of the other means of doing things, to live that 20th century. And I got to know them. I suspected something like this, but didn't understand it. And these are the clusters that are sent in my case, and this is the thing. You all go find this out for yourself. Never mind. I don't buy it. I'm just Pied Piper is all. But this cluster, I've recognized symptoms of this when I got to know it. It says, oh yes, and now I got to know them very well. But there are around 5 that are dominant, but they've melded together to become what I am. And I use them I have used them unconsciously or automatically as I have lived through this life. And I like to use another way of putting it, but they are different kinds. And I now suspect, we flicker from those one to another as needed in our life, or as we get to them. And I have fun show you ways to do this, and I'll get up and do this because this is a interesting way to show this that I have gotten out of my old theatrical base. For example, if one wanted to be in the rather heavy, serious state, you would get in here like this, you see, and you'd be like this, and that's one personality. Or as you moved over here, and you are soft and ethereal, don't you see? And it makes another look at you. And we are all doing this automatically. Or if we went over here, and you're all like, you can do this. Or if you are a ghost-like figure, you're this. Hi. These are the parts of us that are existent and are there consistently. So this was so tremendously exciting because I then had begun to know that basic of what I am. And excitedly, I went through this whole pattern of learning the process of all these, what I am. I found out, for example, many of the things, and I won't go through them tonight, of what I am, but because it's much more fun for you to find out your sources and analyze what you are. Why bore you with mine? But the fascinating part is that this is available to you. All this mass of historical experience, you now are in the position popping into 21 and go to 21 and turn left, and there it is. And that is not only your own life experience, but all of this massive, present life experience, but all this mass of others. I assure you, there's nothing that you can think or be or feel or be emotional about that you haven't experienced at least 50 to 100 times before. And you go through the catalog and say, well, fine, I've lost my love, my lover. And you go down through here and you'll find all these ones, well, I did this here, oh, this is pretty good, I'll use that. You see, it's like a catalog of yourself. And it's your own personal catalog. And that's the beauty. Anything that you can think of that you encounter in this life, you will find a good reference file that is yours and privately yours that you can call upon. And there are some in there that you don't want to do. It's just countercultural, like, I'll kill old bastard, I'll kill him, you see. And you did, you see, there's the point. You did. So this is the new thing that I now lure 21ers in Gateway to play with. Because once you know that, then all the rest, because then your vehicle, as it were, that is you, are able to control so much more easily, so much more powerfully. And you will see so deeply. For example, I used to learn more even now, but my earliest life experience was, at least that I can find, and it isn't, there may be another one, is 150,000 years ago, if I can measure it by our time. See, our recorded history is a little small segment, and that's the thing you become so fascinated with. How could human history be that small when there's so much of it? And it's all there. You can go play in it. And I can tell you that it's probably the most important fun you can have in your life, because it's also so very useful. And the it of you, the I there, the totality of it. And the other thing, oh yes, there's so many facets to this. One of the things that you must then become aware of, and you go find out for yourself again. But in my own case, I was astounded to discover that in this I there of me, when I got into trouble, and have through my lifetime, a helper has been sent. And it's one of the earlier personalities who's capable to do certain things, is, quote, sent, and that's a relative term, to help me. And I must tell you that how that's done is, they don't wait, you think, well, you're going down for the third time. They wait to the 10th time, and then they come. Be sure you get the experience, is the whole point. Don't make it a real experience. I give the illustration. This is about 9 o'clock in the morning, and I went out, and if you've never paddled a surfboard this way, I was a good scuba diver at the time, but not a surfboard. Anyway, so I'm getting, this muscle system here doesn't work very well after you do it. So anyway, it didn't make any difference. But I was doing pretty well. I got on my knees and came in on one, and I was able to sit down and come in on one, and I was able to stand up a little bit. And so after about 6 or 8 rides in on a wave, I got out, and I'm waiting there with a board to next wave. And I waited to a bigger one. I thought, well, I'll wait for a big one, and I keep waiting. And I suddenly noticed that I'm farther out than anyone else. The others are inshore more, and I'm out here. And I said, oh, well, I can't touch bottom, but I can wait, and I'll ride in on the next wave. And so I'm hanging on the board, looking around, and then suddenly I look, and I'm twice as far away than everybody else. I'm way, close to a half mile offshore. I say, oh, no, wait a minute, I better start to get back in. So I start paddling like this to get back in. And I'm tired. I get tired because of this motion. So I sit on the board, and coming over the Pali in Honolulu is this northwesterly trade wind that hits the ocean right off the beach and pushes everything offshore. More over there is a current that moves in around like that on Waikiki Beach, and if you get out in that, you're into something, and I didn't know anything about it. So here I am I'm swimming shore, and I get tired, so I stop. The moment I stop and sit on the board, well, I begin to, the sailing effect pushes me out again. And I yell, nobody hears me, everybody's way over there somewhere, there's all that surf noise. So I kept trying, I'd climb on the board and rest, and as I rested, I began to drift out. And I thought, well, I'll give up the board and try to swim in. And something told me, well, no, I better not do that. I'm too tired, it's too long. Net result, very simple. I slowly but steadily got out of sight of land. And then the day passed alternately between my being in the water, because I was getting a bad sunburn bake on the board, and getting wet and coming out again, and I get out because I thought, oh, there's sharks, typical thing. Until at sunset, I finally realized for the second time in my life that I could drown. And I could easily picture, I could never get to Tahiti or any place like that. It's too far. There's nothing out there after that. And that was my impression. And so the sun is beginning to sink, and you begin to contemplate these things very deeply as to where and what and how. And this is long before I had any idea of out of bodies and all that. This is about 1953. So just as sunset, just as the sun was beginning to sink, over the horizon, coming directly at me, was what looked to be a fishing cruiser. And it didn't come over here and turn like this. It was coming directly at me, and it stopped and without a word picked me up, picked up my board and dumped me on board and took me in. How far offshore do you think I was? I was 19 miles offshore where they picked me up. 19 miles. And they didn't ask me. That's what I never quite understood that. Why they like how the hell did you get out here? What? They just matter of factly picked me on board, and
did it all the time.
it would seem like that. But what I found out was, because that had always been a mystery, how I could see they were about 6 or 8 foot waves. They were not real heavy swells, but enough that you're up and down like this. How they could spot me at in that type of near sunset. How could they see me? And I'm not waving. They wouldn't have heard me anyway, or whatever. But they spotted me, and I was aimed directly. They didn't turn anything else. You know what I found out? I found out that when I got into that predicament, that my it sent one of our life personalities called Trelo, and that's my name for him, because he's a tricky character, does sort of tricks. And you know what he did? He looked at the heading of this cruiser coming in, and he made the helmsman sneeze, and that made him correct just enough and kept him from looking at the correction, and that aimed me directly at the pickup spot, picking me up. The epilogue to that was very simple. The cruiser came in off Waikiki Beach, dumped me on shore, off on there and the board, and I was rested enough that I could swim in, and they warned me about the current. I said, yes, I know. I went in, here's these, these gas lantern types with the Coleman type lanterns, what are they, with the gas wicks on them. And they were here on this place where the guy rents the things in. He was angry. He would have cursed me if he could, because he thought I had stolen his surfboard. Never mind whether I drowned or not. He didn't even think of that. He was thinking whether he had lost his surfboard or not. Anyway, but that's an illustration of how things, and it gave also the explanation, and it was another character who was adept, a part of me, who was adept at the long standing question that was impossible to answer, was in my teenage years, is how the $2 got underneath the board. I don't know whether you've read about that in one of the books. But that had been a chronic mystery, because when the board was lifted up, it hadn't been moved for years or whatever. It was a board beside the house. And you lift up, here's all the bugs and everything else, and here were 2 bright $1 bills underneath that. Seeing this desperate emotional need that I had on that Friday night, that particular Friday night, that this it of mine says, let's help the poor kid out. So they sent this one character, and he created 2 $1 bills and put them underneath the board. The most, and I believe it is because I can't find any other explanation. But there's a series of things I found out in my life that through even down into little kid stuff, where there has been this, guardian angel, helper, guide, whatever, has occurred, and it's all from the it of me. And I know this so surely, having observed it, that the it of each one of you does the same thing. And the moment you know it, it gets a beautiful sense of joy on it, because you know that you are so much more than you ever thought you were. And why is this so important tonight? Because you are right in the target area that you can begin to find it out. You will not get it all in this next run into 21, but you can begin to get the feel of this. Because what does it do? It opens up this whole part of you that makes it so much easier to do it this way than to laboriously chunk it. You can do it with the tools that you have right now. And in the weeks and months to come, that you will have fun doing. It's real thrilling stuff. You'll understand the parts of you. That's the other thing. You'll understand yourself. And what does that mean? A whole new overview for you. You'll know what you are. You'll accept all the killers you've been and all the angels you've been, if you want to put it, all the saints, whatever. You'll find all of those within you, the whole scope, and it's most fascinating. That's why I dropped this on you tonight, because now's your chance to begin that. And it's the exquisite laughter that you will feel in yourself when you, in turn, get to that. Now, there's one final kicker, and you can really, then I'll leave it as it is, and that makes it even worse. After about 4 years of deepening and knowing my it, we got into this other thing about purposes and things like that, and I asked Willie, and Willie is you know who Willie is? My Willie, do you know who he was? He was a court jester in the 12th century, and he got beheaded because he said the wrong joke. So but the thing that in turn was the final crux of all of this. So I finally got deep enough into these consultations or multiple group of my personalities communicating that, and you got to worry about, look, I'm talking to myself. I'm going to have to be hospitalized. You know, these kinds of things run through. Well, this is crazy. People talk to themselves, and I'm wrong. Anyway, what I began to discover is, and began to get suspicious, because this seemed to be the thing that the inspec was talking about, that I needed a basic, to know a basic, and this was a basic. And so, and I'm working on this all symbolically, because it's the only way it can be done. So I brought this up to Willie and a couple of my other life personalities. So, you know, I wonder, what about this inspec? and this sort of a doo-dee-doo-doo-doo, you know. I said, what's the matter here? And Willie says, come on, Robert, I want to show you something. So we turn a little bit out of phase. He says, step. And I stepped. Wham! I'm into this flow that I thought was going to inspect land, and all the beautiful love and warmth and everything else and all the various personalities that it was and so on. And do you know where it was going? Into my it. And I thought, come on. Oh. Seems that my it is continuously busy, as all other its are, is retrieving parts of life personalities that have been lost or one reason or another. So you see, that was the design. They got lost. They're lost in the BS territories, and they're supposed to come back to the it. You see that? To your it. Nobody else's but yours. The I there of you. And what happens is that your it and my it, everyone's, are constantly cruising these BS territories to retrieve life personalities of each of us that has gotten lost or locked into one of these territories, and they're retrieving them and bringing them back to the it. You know why? That's what they're all doing, and this is what you're doing, and you find out again. I'm being so dogmatic, go find out. And what it is, your it is doing is collecting all of these so that you in turn can take off and wink out. And that's how I found out about that, because I began to discover, and you'll discover it, that your it has adjoining its all bonded to it. You are a part of a bonding system that I'm 86% sure that you all are within this bonded cluster of its of which I am a part. And what we're doing is that we are gathering all of the parts of us together, each individual. Like you got some that are lost in various belief systems, and there's a constant flow of retrieving those and getting them stuck back in. They're parts of you. That, I can give you a classic one that you know about already, having gone this far in Gateway, is that Miranon is attempting to retrieve Shay, who is here. And that's his connection, is he's a retriever trying to pull Shay back into their it cluster so that they can move on and wink out and go in another direction. And we'll get to that tomorrow night. So have a good time in 21. You can be your own ghost now, don't you see? And you'll know your own ghosts. This is another part of it. It's a lot of fun. So, yeah?
Where and what, who is BB now, today?
Where, who is BB is already, BB, as you know, attempted to rescue me.
Right.
And he's come and gone in this lifetime.
Yeah.
Yeah. He
didn't wait for you?
Hmm?
He didn't wait for you?
He couldn't. He died in an airplane accident. That was quite a thing. And I didn't even know about it at the time, but BB was a friend of mine named Bonson, and he flew a twin Beech, if you know, and he was used to long fields instead of grass fields, and he came into, I learned this when we were flying together out of a small place in North Carolina. He went up to Worcester, Ohio, and went into the Worcester, Ohio airport. And the lesson he'd learned in that grass field, having been on hard runway all the time, he over-applied at the Worcester airport and hit power lines on the way in and crashed right in the middle of the field and burned and died. Well, and that's one of the people that I saw, speaking of validation and so on. And I later on got to Agnew and found it because he was involved in the 60s with me, if you think how time flies. And so we were much together in this. But let me tell you the greatest mystery in Agnew's passing. When I attended his funeral in Winston-Salem. And here, as he was being, his casket, and nobody saw the remains because they were too burnt up, as it was being lowered into the grave, a twin beach made a power pass at about 150 feet over that grave. His wife, she just broke down. We could not find the source of that twin beach. In other words, we checked all the airports for 150 miles around Winston-Salem, and that twin beach did not emerge from any of them, and there was no flight plans filed for any twin beach for that day. One of the greatest and most interesting mysteries is where it came from. Somebody's it was doing something. And that's the other thing that you will find, that the more that you get to know your it, you'll become astounded at the capabilities that you have that you never knew you had, but you did 20,000 years ago, so why not now? Right? That's the thing. So I can't say much more about your going and having fun in 21 except have fun.
Does the it have more than one of these sojourners in one time space?
In one lifetime?
Yeah.
Does your it have mine? You mean more than one physical existence? In other words, is there another
Your
part?
it has Bob
Oh,
and Sam
All in the same way.
somewhere else on Earth or something.
Are you going to make me have to tell that story? Huh.
No.
No. I was just, that came up through for another reason. And I was astounded to discover that I indeed, my it indeed has another person living concurrently in this era. I was astounded to discover. I should have known better. And when I asked Trail about why this, he says, well, that's just a backup in case you don't do what you're supposed to. Oh, anyway. I know that I had known for some time, and I'd gotten that person into some trouble, that there was a person that I related to that was conducting similar work and doing something, and I attempted to get in touch with it. It was her. And I did it 2 or 3 times and apparently began to get her into severe problems in her environment. So I didn't do it again. But I did get her name and where she was. So I do stupid things at times. So I took this name, and this was 10 years ago, something like that. And I routed it through channels to find out if this person really existed. And you can use your own conjecture when I tell you that that was 5 years ago or longer in the Soviet Union. And 2 things happened. I guess it'd be 10 years ago now, Dave. Goodness sakes. Anyway, what came up as a result of that was that I found some government people on my doorstep saying, how did I know about that person? Moreover, I got about 3 different casual inquiries from the Soviet Union, from that location, as it were, on asking could we exchange data, which was, I thought, very significant. And that was a highly secure place under the typical then Soviet type of stuff. Now becomes the big question, now that the wall's down, what do we do? And I don't think I have the courage to do it.
Would you be allowed to?
I would assume so. I don't know.
BB wasn't allowed to meet you.
That's right. I don't
You weren't
know.
allowed to meet AA.
That's right. I don't know. I'm afraid to ask, but that's one of the things I have yet to play with it. You can find out and play with it for me, will you?
Joe.
Can I ask, how has this new overview of the it that you are affected your understanding of being a human? And the conversation you had earlier about we were earth addicted. We're addicted to the human experience, so we keep coming back in that. Does that change your view of what just?
Oh, no, no at all. It just expresses more deeply the addiction, don't you see?
Well, that's what I see, so I wondered if that was...
Oh, but it puts a much greater value on it than we do when we're living it. That's all I can say. In other words, the perspective that you have, well, I didn't do anything. I'm living this life and I've done nothing. But when you see it in another perspective of 1,000 years from now, for example, you look back and say, I did a magnificent job on that, you see? That's the difference, is that perspective. So, there you go. Have nice flying, rolling.
What starts the powering out?
What starts the powering out? Which way, in or out?
Out. I mean, you know, we get wound down
Escape
where we have
velocity.
no velocity anymore. How do we get velocity to start winding back out again?
How do we start the moving out process? I'm now convinced that it's what it might be defined as a variable. I use the term because I can't think of any other one. You could call it an anomaly. Some particular event. I would say it's a leak of that other energy into your system, that some profound experience, some profound event, something does it. And it probably didn't do it this lifetime. This, I assure you, it started many lifetimes ago for each of you. And something started that movement in this direction. And so each successive lifetime, the it of you has said, well, we got to improve this a little bit, or we got to hold it back a little bit. So we'll put this mix here, but we'll put this big doubting Thomas in here, so that won't make it quite so easy. It'll make it more of a challenge, you see? But I got news for you. If you can make this change, it alters the whole thing, because you become one of the head honchos of your own executive committee. And you're of immense interest. So you would find that here's how, one way to express it, of course, is that yes, this lifetime ordinarily would be nothing more than one describing their latest dream at a cosmic cocktail party. Do you follow?
Yeah.
But you are making that different because you recognize the illusions before someone tells you that they are.
So none of us has come here to do any great big whatever. We're just here to fight, to more or less continue on our own development.
You're accumulating, and again,
Like we're not here to save the world.
yeah, well, that's part of the pressure. You see, oh, I got to save the world. Well, you can save that for 10 or 20 or 50 lifetimes, but then try something else, you know.
Bob, what about the average individual on the street? Would they be a lesser or greater of their individual parts?
The average individual on the street is so locked into belief systems that they can't see beyond their ears.
So for us, would this be a frustrating for us communicating with?
Oh, no, because you will, well, the most amazing thing that you're going to find is that there are much more perceptive people that you encounter, and you didn't realize how perceptive they were, but now you will, because you will relate to them in forms and ways that you never thought you would, because you haven't had that available to you. Because now with this whole system of personalities available to you, they'll work something like this. Here's a person, well, hello, what's your name? My name is Jane. Boing, 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 boing. Oh, and something comes out of you, triggers a part of you that radiates with a personality such as Jane. You make new friends, you make all sorts of things, and all sorts of interrelationships begin to develop simply because you have all these to call upon. Even, and you recognize the process, then you encourage it. Do you understand? Instead of hold it back, you encourage it. All sorts of fascinating. Suddenly you find you're a great swimmer and you never swam in your life. These kinds of things. Fascinating.
Would that be one of the reasons why we all got along so great this week?
Well, is that one of the reasons why you did which?
Why we all got along so good this week? Is that we have that in us already?
Yeah. Well, you're getting there. See, you're beginning to open up and up.
Yeah, I mean, every one of us identified with each other.
That's a part.
It was so obvious.
That's right. That's what happens here. You're beginning to see. It becomes very, very obvious. I would normally tell you this tomorrow night, but it's obvious. You have begun to feel more like a family. You know everybody's qualities, you know their faults, and that just as you have a brother or a sister that is that way, so you accept this that way, you see. Great feeling, isn't it?
Wonderful.
And I got to get a great feeling. I haven't had supper yet. I'll see you all tomorrow night, all right?